Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Unfuck Your Habitat. You're Better Than Your Mess by Rachel Hoffman. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. 1. Getting started. Nice ass. Now get off it. Who needs Unfuck Your Habitat? The Case for 2010s. Mental Health and Your Mess. The Perfectionist's Paradox. Nice ass. Now get off it. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're flipping through home organization magazines or browsing home improvement and decorating websites, thinking, this is it. I'm finally doing it. I'm going to get my house under control. You look at picture after glossy picture of perfectly organized spaces with no visible clutter, clearly labeled storage solutions, and gleaming fresh paint, rooms with sunlight streaming in through the windows, and you think to yourself, are you fucking kidding me? Those pictures seem impossible. Hell, they are impossible if you own enough possessions to function in modern life. You don't live in a world that's being shown in those pictures. You live in the real world. A messy world that's full of dirty dishes, clothes languishing in laundry baskets, and a dining room table you haven't seen the surface of in months. You're not a slob. You just don't have the time, the money, the energy, or even the inclination to achieve what those pictures are showing you. You just want to get your home to the point where a drop-in guest doesn't send you into a tailspin of panic, and where you can live your everyday life without being disgusted or depressed by your surroundings. You know, somewhere deep down, that your home will never look anything like those pictures. And it's depressing, discouraging, and ultimately pretty damn frustrating. You may be looking at those magazines or websites and thinking that there's no hope for you, and no hope for your home. Your house is never going to look like that. You may be thinking that a clean, organized home is completely out of reach, and there's just no way for it to get better than whatever state of mess it's in right now. You feel trapped by the state of your home, and powerless to do anything about it. Well, good news! You're wrong. There's a universe of difference between a picture-perfect home that can be featured in magazines and a perfectly functional and livable home that you aren't ashamed of or stressed out by. And Unfuck Your Habitat can teach you how to have a home you love and feel comfortable in, while helping you realize that your home doesn't need to look like the ones in those pictures in order for you to love living in it. You deserve better than to live in filth, and with just a little bit of effort and practice, you can easily master the skills and habits you need in order to get and keep your home livable. It's going to take some time, and nothing gets better overnight, but it will get better. Other housekeeping and organizing systems have a specific kind of person in mind. They assume that everyone is married with kids, with one spouse at home with a lot of time to devote to housekeeping. They tend to ignore single people, or people without kids, or students, or people with pets, or people with roommates, or people with full-time jobs or classes or other shit going on. They ignore people with physical or mental illnesses or other limitations that don't allow for complicated, involved housekeeping on an inflexible schedule. They forget about people who live in apartments, or rented rooms, or a small space in someone else's home. They forget that people live at home with their parents, or in dorm rooms with total strangers. They forget that not everyone fits into a narrow mold of circumstance and ability. And they forget that sometimes you just don't feel like it. Basically, they ignore a whole lot of people who live in the real world. Since so few of us fit the mold of these traditional housekeeping systems, it doesn't make sense to try to follow those methods and expect them to lead us to success. A picture-perfect showroom home is admirable, but let's be honest, that's not going to be a reality for most of us. And that's okay. So the first step in turning our messes into something we can happily live with is realizing that it's time to rethink the way we approach housekeeping and organizing and how they fit into the lives we actually live. In this book, you'll learn how to incorporate cleaning and organizing into a busy life, and how to work with all of the various fun things life throws at you that have kept you from doing this up to now. You'll learn that rather than being intimidated by what you think other people's homes look like, you can get to a point where you're happy and comfortable with what your own home can be. You'll realize that the real world rarely, if ever, lines up with what aspirational magazines and websites are showing you. It's not as intimidating as it seems, but I'm willing to bet no one's ever broken it down into a system that works in your world, and so it's easier just to write it off as completely impossible, and then never even get started. And that's why you are where you are right now. Overwhelmed, discouraged, feeling like a failure, and hating your home. We should probably start by accepting the fact that, for the most part, cleaning your house kind of sucks. Sorry, but it does. Getting and keeping your house clean and organized isn't necessarily difficult, but it's rarely fun. And we all have other things we'd rather be doing. If given a choice, very few people would choose to spend their time cleaning or organizing their home. It seems like a giant time investment, during which your life is totally devoid of fun and sunshine and anything else you like. But there's no reason tidying up your home has to take up all of your precious spare time. It can be accomplished just a little bit at a time, in between the far more enjoyable and important things that happen in your life. It's critical to realize that you aren't beyond hope. You can always improve your living situation, but you need to do some work to get there. We're often busy, and sometimes we're lazy. No need to sugarcoat that. But wouldn't it be nice to walk into your house at the end of a busy day and not feel depressed or disgusted or dejected? There are very few people who enjoy cleaning on a regular basis, and frankly, I'm a little suspicious of those people anyway. So let's just accept that it's not necessarily going to be the most interesting or fulfilling part of your day, and move on to actually getting it done so that you can finally do the things you want to do in a home that you don't hate spending time in. Once you've acquired the tools you need to keep your house from devolving into a total shithole while still managing to do the things you enjoy, you'll develop a habit of keeping your living space nice without it taking over your life. You'll find that you can maintain a home that doesn't stress you out or embarrass you, and you can accomplish that in only a few minutes a day. You'll be able to have people over if you want to. You won't panic over unannounced guests. The important thing to remember is that there is nothing that can't be unfucked with a little bit of effort and motivation. You just have to do it. You have to overcome the compulsion to sit on the couch and mess around on the computer or watch TV, and get up and do something. Anything. If you have the motivation but lack the ability, you have to figure out how to work with or around any limitations that have prevented you from doing this in the past. Unfuck Your Habitat, or UFYH, is all about helping you do just that. It's about lighting a gentle fire under our asses and reminding ourselves that we deserve a home we can be comfortable in and proud of. It's about acquiring the skills we lack and applying those skills in our everyday lives in a way that results in improvement without burnout. It's about celebrating every success, no matter how small it might seem at the time. Because when we accomplish something, especially something that seemed impossible, it feels pretty awesome. Who needs Unfuck Your Habitat? So many different kinds of people have been failed by traditional housekeeping and organizational systems. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that close to an entire generation has entered adulthood without the skills needed to keep a clean and organized home, skills that previous generations took for granted. Whereas in the stereotypical nuclear family of the past, one of the parents, usually the mother, would teach housekeeping skills to the next generation, usually the daughters. The realities of life today don't make this a feasible, realistic, or a desirable scenario. The definition of family is evolving all the time, but that archaic mindset regarding housekeeping roles hasn't changed much at all. As a result, many domestic skills have fallen by the wayside due to lack of time, shifting priorities, or inadequate tools. As we move past traditional roles within the home into structures that better fit how we actually live our lives, we also need to adapt our methods for keeping our homes running smoothly. As a society, We haven't yet caught up to that reality, so we've lost a whole lot of our ability to get the job done while we've been looking around wondering whose job it is. Traditional housekeeping systems attempt to make people's lives fit into a rigid structure of routines and schedules for cleaning and maintaining the house, and that doesn't make any sense at all for a lot of people. Doesn't it make more sense to fit your cleaning routines around your life instead? Today, it's critical to incorporate flexible routines that work with your life instead of against it. Otherwise, nothing will ever get done. Trying to use a housekeeping system that was developed for someone with a very different lifestyle is a little like wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward, and pretty soon you're going to get frustrated and give up entirely, left feeling much worse than when you started. So maybe it's time to try something completely different. Something that was designed to work for people who are failed by other systems, and that recognizes that you have a whole lot of other shit going on. So, who needs Unfuck Your Habitat? Everyone, regardless of gender. With all the different living situations that we enjoy today, assigning housekeeping tasks based on archaic and outdated gender roles just doesn't make sense. Traditional standards of who should be doing the cleaning don't apply to how people live their lives nowadays, and haven't for quite some time. Households are made up of every combination of gender, age, and relationship. If you live somewhere, you deserve for that place to be nice and clean and livable. And you should be the one who makes it that way. If several people are responsible for making the mess, each of those people is responsible for getting it clean and under control. It doesn't matter who you are or what box or boxes you check. Gender roles as they relate to cleaning are bullshit, and just offer a handy excuse for half the population to be lazy and the other half to feel guilty. Busy people. We're all busy. Very busy, in fact. Almost all of us have stuff going on that takes up a vast majority of our time, whether it's work, school, family obligations, or anything else. It doesn't make sense for us to follow a bunch of steps that were developed for people who have hours each day to devote to cleaning and organizing their home. Who actually has that? No one I know. Even the people I know who are home all day, whether they work at home or are stay-at-home parents, don't have time for the type of strict structure outlined by traditional systems because they're busy doing the million little things necessary for keeping the rest of their lives running smoothly. To be honest, cleaning and organizing the house falls so far down on the list of things to do that it often falls off that list entirely. We haven't adapted how we look at housekeeping to reflect how we really live our lives, and that's why so many of us feel like we're failing at it. With UFYH, you'll learn how to change the way cleaning and other home-related tasks fit into your life, and be able to adapt and adjust to whatever life throws at you at any given time. People too broke to have a full-time maid. So, you. One of the other things that most organizational and cleaning systems have in common is that they tend to require a significant investment, either of money or of time. And if you're like most other people these days, you don't exactly have a surplus of either one. Any free time or extra money is almost immediately earmarked for something else, something that's more important or possibly more fun. So you may find yourself wondering if it's even possible to get your shit under control if you can't spend a ton of money or every waking moment dealing with your mess, because everything you're hearing sure makes it seem like it's not. It is possible, and UFYH will show you how. There's no reason that getting your home in order should drain your bank account or your energy reserves. Anyone with physical or mental illnesses or disabilities. Many people come to UFYH because they can't find a place for themselves in the expectations of other systems. For example, people with mental or physical illnesses or limitations often find that massive cleaning sessions or inflexible schedules involving intense bursts of work just aren't physically possible. It's not about being lazy. It's about not being able to accomplish what ends up being a bunch of impossible tasks because of factors that are entirely beyond your control. The underlying assumption about people's ability to do housework seems to be that everyone is able-bodied with plenty of energy to spare. That assumption can be pretty damaging, because everyone who doesn't fit into that tiny little box simply gets left behind. UFYH realizes that not everyone fits this mold, and will help show you how to work within or around whatever your limitations may be. People on their own for the first time. Young adults in their first living situation away from their parents, whether that's a dorm, apartment, or shared housing of any kind, often find themselves at a loss as far as what to do, how to do it, and when it should be done when it comes to housework. And if you grew up in an environment where you didn't learn these skills, either because your parents weren't good at keeping a house, or because they did it all for you and never made you learn, being out on your own can be a bit of a startling wake-up call. There's nothing inherently wrong with not knowing what to do around the house, but the skills needed have to be learned at some point. And the longer you wait, the more difficult it can be. Lazy people. Then there are some of us who actually are lazy. And that's totally fine. We all have a lot going on in our lives, and when faced with a little bit of downtime, it's totally understandable that the last thing you feel like doing is housework. I mean, doing the dishes takes a lot of energy, and it's not fun at all. So it's really no wonder that so many people choose to just succumb to the inclination to sit down and do nothing. The problem with this is that, well, house stuff needs to happen at some point. If you let it go forever because you just don't feel like it, your house is quickly going to become, and stay, a messy disaster. So while laziness is a completely understandable reason not to work on getting your home in order, you need to get past it for even just a short amount of time. And then you can go back to doing whatever it is you'd prefer to be doing, even if that happens to be nothing at all. Perfectionists. It seems counterintuitive, but some people who identify as perfectionists tend to have trouble keeping their home in order. Because it's so difficult to clean and organize everything thoroughly and perfectly all at once, perfectionists can get discouraged by what seems like a lack of results, and just give up. Learning that progress is incremental and not necessarily flawless can be a huge step toward getting a messy house under control, a little bit at a time. There's no end to the reasons that people don't or can't clean their home, and there's no one type or category of person who needs help with housekeeping. Lots of people in lots of situations find themselves not up to the task of keeping their home in order. Whether that's due to a shortage of time, a lack of skills, physical limitations, or a loss of motivation, there is hope. With practice, focus, and, most important, a solid but flexible game plan, everyone can get their mess under control and transform their home from something they're embarrassed and stressed out by into something that's comfortable and calm. And about this gender role bullshit. As we've already discussed, there are a whole bunch of reasons why someone might not know what to do in order to keep a clean home. One of the reasons that's unfortunately all too common is that a lot of people still buy into the idea that cleaning a home and maintaining a household is women's work. Meaning, they think men are automatically off the hook for housework simply because they're men. A very common, but especially obnoxious, assertion is that men just don't see the mess the same way women do. This is an infuriating viewpoint that, unfortunately, lots and lots of people believe. Like, so many people. This tired old trope is meant to explain why men often don't do their fair share of housework, and why all of those domestic responsibilities generally fall to women. And it's complete bullshit. Everyone sees the mess. There's just a huge number of people who believe it's not a man's job to do anything about it. Before we dive too deep into a discussion of gender roles and expectations and how they all get wrapped up with household duties, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, it isn't true that men are bad at housekeeping and women are good at it. I can name dozens of examples from my own experience that contradict that. I'm sure you can too. What we can say, however, is that we are at least somewhat socially conditioned to see those roles as the default. and anyone who doesn't fit into them as an exception to the rule. Also, we should remember that this mindset is fundamentally traditional and heteronormative and not 100% applicable in modern life. The typical nuclear family, mom, dad, and a couple of kids, is less and less common now, with families and households instead being made up in endless configurations that don't fall within those very stringent, very traditionally defined parameters. So when we challenge our perceptions of those gender roles, we also need to challenge how we define family and household, and make some adjustments to accurately reflect reality. That said, the idea that men are not good at housekeeping is a really pervasive societal perception that has infiltrated almost every aspect of modern life. Advertising, TV shows, gender-directed media like magazines, and irritating social media memes all reinforce the fact that men just don't do housework. Or that if they try, they're hilariously inept at it and need a woman to set them straight and do it right. Or that a wife's or a mom's job is to keep the house clean, regardless of her job or responsibilities outside the home, even though she may have as many professional demands on her time as her male partner, if not more. Or that a bachelor's home is expected to be a disaster. That is, until his mom comes and cleans it up, or he finds a girlfriend to give his place a woman's touch. And every time we repeat these stereotypes or accept them as fact, we not only help advance these outdated gender norms and place an unearned burden on women, but we also demean and infantilize men by tacitly accepting that they just don't or can't do housework. Lots of men, especially those raised with more traditional upbringings like that nuclear family we were just talking about, see a mess, figure it'll get taken care of soon, and then cease thinking about it at all. Lots of women see the same mess, figure they'll need to take care of it soon, and start trying to figure out how to make that happen. See the difference? Women are conditioned to see dirt and messes as their responsibility to clean up, and men are conditioned to see dirt and messes in a way that requires no further action on their part. It's the interpretation of what they're seeing, not whether they actually see it. So it's not accurate to say that men don't see the mess. It's bullshit. It's what happens after the mess is observed that matters. Is it our job to do something about that mess? Or are we just passively observing it with the expectation that someone else is going to take care of it? Once again, I'm not saying that men are terrible at housework and women are good at it. That would be just as ridiculous as saying that men are incapable of seeing messes just because they're men. Tons of men are great at housework, and tons of women are terrible at it. And most people, regardless of gender, fall somewhere in between. Many households have an easy and equitable division of labor, unrestrained by gender roles, and they're doing just fine. Gender-based housework is clearly, then, not any kind of biological imperative, but a social one. We each have our own natural tendencies, but those tendencies are influenced by everyday social cues and expectations. No one is born knowing how to do housework. We all have to learn it somehow. Some people learn it by being taught within their home by parents, siblings, or other family members at an early age. Other people figure it out on their own through trial and error when they first start living outside the family home. Still others teach themselves through reading, research, and observation, which also includes a fair amount of trial and error. The point is, there's no innate housekeeping gene that's only passed on to girls. Everyone has the same ability and capacity to learn these skills. And it's considerably easier to learn at a young age. By starting young, children grow up with the necessary habits for keeping a home clean, and learn the basic skills that will help them keep their mess under control for the rest of their lives. So that's why, within the family home, it's so important to teach all children these skills, regardless of gender and age. Anyone who grows up with these skills is at an advantage over those of us who need to learn them later on, since kids tend to learn things with an ease that most of us adults don't possess. Not to mention that being brought up in a household where everyone is expected to carry their fair share goes a long way to normalizing the idea that housework is for everyone. In addition, there's no small amount of learned helplessness associated with gender roles and cleaning. Let's go back to those god-awful social media memes and eye-rollingly terrible TV commercials, poking fun at how men are just hopeless around the house. They don't know how to do laundry! Isn't that hilarious? No, it's not. All those dramatized examples of how they can't get their own children clean, fed, and dressed, and how the smallest routine task leads to catastrophe or slapstick comedy, and how a woman needs to swoop in and fix it, effortlessly, while chuckling about how endearing it all is, instead of fast-pitching a bottle of glass cleaner across the room in frustration and anger, which is a much more likely real-world reaction to that much obnoxious learned helplessness. Going hand in hand with learned helplessness is the concept of strategic incompetence. Picture being asked or expected to do something you really hate. For example, the dishes. So you kind of half-ass the job because you hate it, and the dishes don't really get all that clean. Then the person who asked you to do the dishes gets exasperated and ends up re-washing them and never asks you to do them again. Which is totally what you wanted in the first place, right? Well, that works out pretty well for you, but it's a shitty thing to do to the person who wants and needs you to do your part. It's not that you don't know how to or physically can't complete the task competently. You're being crappy at it so that you won't be expected to do it again. And that's not a great thing to do to someone. It's fundamentally selfish. Sometimes we have to do things we don't enjoy because it's a part of living in a home, and pretending to suck at something so you won't have to do it again is just rude. I mean, are we serious about teaching people to believe that if you do something terribly enough, you'll never be expected to do it again? I hope we all realize how absurd that is. When children are learning how to do things, we don't take one imperfect attempt as a failure and cease expecting them to acquire that skill forever. We expect them to keep trying until they get it right. This isn't a cycle that's only applicable to children. If you can't do something well, you keep doing it until you can. You use what resources you can find to get better at it. You don't just shrug it off with, "Oh well, I'm terrible at this and should therefore never be expected to try again." Come on! We're doing men, and anyone else who's new to acquiring these skills, an incredible disservice when we accept this as some kind of fact, letting it stand that we think they're somehow not capable of acquiring and perfecting new skills. Any discussion of gender roles, norms, and expectations invariably gets people's hackles up, making them feel attacked, stereotyped, or belittled. So it's very important to realize that all of this isn't necessarily the fault of any individual person, and it certainly doesn't apply across the board. Whether or not someone, or someone's family, significant other, or peer group buys into or believes these gender stereotypes, the fact remains that they exist, and they're shoved down our throats and subconsciously embedded in our brains at every given opportunity. How many men get praised or acknowledged for doing things that women do thanklessly all the time? By giving the impression that it's remarkable when a man completes the basic tasks of domestic living, we're reinforcing the fact that we, as a society, think that this is unusual. That men should be congratulated for doing women's work. That women are lucky when their partner does half the domestic work. It's almost irrelevant if the people who are involved actually believe this, because society believes it. Why do we accept the idea that it's noteworthy when someone cleans up a mess they helped make? Silly, right? Since we don't live in the 50s anymore, thank goodness, these days women are just as likely to be working outside the home as men are. In the past, it may have been true that women spent less time and had fewer responsibilities outside the house, and that's why all of the domestic responsibilities fell to them. But it's not true anymore, and it hasn't been for quite some time. Yet we look at a man who works 40-plus hours a week at a high-pressure job, and a woman who works the same number of hours at a similarly stressful job, and we still expect that the woman is going to be the one who puts in all of the additional time to do the housework. We seriously need to step back and examine why that is. The circumstances that led to those expectations no longer exist.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?